Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much. Today is January 11th, 2022. I have to start practice saying the correct year at this point. And this class is for Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, Level 1. I'm going to focus mostly on Level 4, Lesson 4 of Level 1. Although there is a Level 2 teaching, I was looking at my notes and everything that I want to get through for class. Between that and some questions that Lyson sent to me via email, again, I'm going to focus on Level 1 stuff. I'm always going to catch up with the Level 2 stuff. So advanced students, please do not feel like you are less focused on in any way, but this is foundation stuff. And even as I go back over these things, and these are concepts that I'm relatively familiar with, I'm just going to shift my camera a little bit over here. Concepts that I am relatively familiar with, I go back over them and I'm like, wow, there is still a lot for me to refocus on, or more nutrients for me, like when you watch a favorite movie, to understand and think and consider that some more. So this teaching, and also let me bring up a good picture that I can work with here. Hold on one second. This is Lesson 4 of Level 1, and it's going to be about, the first part is inorganic life versus organic life, even though we're flying rainbow lasagna and we're removing duality. So I hesitate to even say the word versus, but in comparison with, and also food eating practices, because these two things kind of come together for us in our physical embodiment experience. So let me just get, I did not prepare this part for class, but I very quickly can find the right picture that I want to share with you. Here, we'll work with this picture right here. Good, so now I've got something that is ready for when I'm ready to share screen. So yeah, I'll go directly into share screen. Let's talk about first defining terms, the sense of your physicality presence in contrast with, and I'll get a little drawing annotation tool here, in contrast with the rest of your energy presence. So here in this drawing, you've got the anthropomorphic shape of the seated figure that is right here. And then all around this, you have the chakras or energy centers. And I recorded the original lesson in 2013, and I was very much contrasting the differences between these two levels of being. But really what I want to focus on more is the sense of the integration of these two levels of being. So I'm going to do both things as I teach you today. Oh, I know what's going on. The cat is in here, the dog is in here, everybody's jumping on things. Sorry about that. And the cat is not my cat, she's just the cat who lives here, and we're appreciating her presence. Okay. Your physical, cellular, somatic body, your anthropomorphic form. Anthropomorphic meaning anthropo-human, morphic, shaped like a human form that you can see clearly at the center of this. It's actually a scratchboard, like an etching. And all around this, there are the whirling vortices that go like this, that are energy centers that have points of contact that go up the center of your physical embodiment neurology that is known as your spine and your neurology. These are part of the circulatory system of light or pure awareness that goes up, around, and through your body. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, hold on, you know I get so excited, like my throat gets very dry. The concept of your physicality structure, your somatic or cellular structure, your bio-body form, body aspect that is known as the red physicality. So it's this red layer of being that is materialistic. It is evident in the material world. I joke and touch my face, like you have a face, you can touch it, you can feel it. And this is also part of your self-exploration at being here. So mostly when people are little children and infants, you go through that level of self-exploration, where in a pre-verbal state, you're kind of like I'm here, like I have these things, there are these things, I touch myself, I feel this, like I kind of hit myself, I bite myself, like I feel all these things. It's your physicality structure. So we have spent, most of us, many years in exploring what the physicality structure is, and what that we have one, and it is also consensual, not meaning like in consent, but that we have a consensus that we can all agree, you have a physical body. We all see it. It is your corporeal body. there are many layers of existence that are in conjunction with that corporeality that are not necessarily recognized and acknowledged by the other beings, the other human beings, or the human thought structure of scientific objective materialism that are here. But, and yet, we must validate those as also aspects of being and aspects of self-state. So humans have been encouraged to identify as self-state. I am, my identity is my body and the boundaries of my body. And maybe the mammalian emotional realm, which I've spoken about as being, like pushing, pulling, I love, I hate, attraction, revulsion, caring for young and also being cared for by others, the sense of romantic partnership, reproductive ideals, and then also the human intellect on top of that. And that for a very long time, that slice of reality has been what we define as the human existence, but that there is this whole other level of existence from the heart level and upward, the higher faculties and everything that connects us to the divine world, the world of higher intelligence, the world of less density. So in the original recording of this material, I made a distinction between everything that's the lower frequencies, and lower doesn't mean worse, it just means lower. Here's lower on my piano. That's not a bad note, it's just a lower note. Here's a higher note. Those are both perfectly nice notes on the spectrum of frequency that is known as the octaves of my piano. So first of all, in describing these items, aspects of your being, there is no better or worse. But it's often presented that way in philosophy or in metaphysics, the sense of your lower self, like that's just your lower self talking, or your ego state, or some diminishment. But I want to break through all of these. So I'm just like being really clear with my language, or using my voice as like the Windex of clarity. We are clearing away those older projections and preconceptions on what it is to have a lower state, even having a denser state. As you start to define these levels of being, we could talk about them as densities, that there's, and also of course be impeccable in our language, because I did the whole teaching all about what the third dimension is. So the third dimensional reality is the aspect of you that is volumetric and lives in a box. But the third density, which is what many people in this metaphysical world are now talking about, we would call that a focus on the mundane reality, a focus on materialism, a focus on the physicality structures that we perceive with our 5 physical senses. So you have 5 physical senses that we use to appreciate the world around us. And that's mostly where science, the present philosophy, comes from, in appreciation of the world that we can see and sense with our 5 physical senses. And that's literally what the science known as physics is all about. Everything focused on the mundane world. But I don't mean to either diminish the mundane world or to over appreciate it, because it is one layer of being and it is one layer of density. So I don't know if you ever did these density experiments in science class or whatever, in a craft class or something like that, where you make a beaker full of liquid or a glass full of liquid with something dense down at the bottom that could be like a dense mineral oil or something like that, and then a layer of another liquid on top, another liquid on top, and that they all seek their layers. Or if you've ever just made a simple mixture of salad dressing where you have the oil on one level and the vinegar on the other level, that these are different densities of matter and that they have their own stratification or layers of being. And of course, when you shake up or emulsify the salad dressing, everything mixes and blobs all together. But then if you let it just sit at its natural self state, all of these layers end up separating out into their natural stratification. That is the truth of your beingness, represented by here in this sculpture and represented by, I'll go back to the share screen here. These are the layers of your being that are surrounding and interpenetrating your physicality structure, that are the end result of, remember, the infinitely stretchy fabric of the cosmos of space, time, and consciousness being stretched by the infinitely heavy bowling ball of the vector of your awareness as it travels through or experiences being submerged in the dimensionality of space-time. that you with your self state are stretching, or you could think of it as God's fingers or higher self's fingers stretching and dimpling the fabric of reality in order to create these stretchy aspects of self that are known as the chakras. Let me bring up another picture. Hold on a second. And I know I make squinty scrolly faces, but it's worth it. It's in here. Oh my goodness. This is what I'm looking for. Okay, do another share screen. This is a sketch that I made. And wait, let me also make sure that I've got the annotation, because what I want to show you in this sketch is a sense of the way that this becomes dimpled. Yeah, you can see I'm making a line up here. So you start off with this simple sphere, because when I have presented the stretchy fabric of the cosmos, I've presented it as, let's say I'm drawing a flat piece of paper or a chessboard or something like this, right? But it's actually a sphere. So now we're starting to get into the more sophisticated understanding of what it is. You have this volumetric circle with, equal forces on all sides. And these are the vectors. I jokingly call it God's fingers, but it is you, God, as self-state on your divine journey, dimpling and using your own vectors of consciousness or your own motion through time as consciousness, moving in these different directions. That is what ends up creating this form over here, where you can see, so one force of consciousness going in this direction kind of pokes and stretches the fabric going in this way. There's a stretching of fabric going in this way. And as I described this is recap in previous classes, the more that you stretch the fabric, the higher the frequency, the shorter the wavelength, and the colors change. So if we start off, if this is the red level out here, we stretch more and more and more until we get up to the violet level over here. That's the shorter wavelength, higher frequency, meaning a shorter amount of stretchiness, but moving at a much faster rate. And then if I use white to be over here at the singularity, I'm making a tiny white dot, but I'll point to it with the arrow to emphasize it, that I made a tiny white dot because it is the smallest, shortest frequency of infinite smallness, the shortest wavelength. I spoke the wrong words. Help me out here. I'm talking to my brain. Help me out here. Brain, say the right words. It is the shortest wavelength, meaning it is the infinitely tiniest amount of size of a waveform that it can be, but it is moving at the fastest rate, highest frequency, shortest wavelength, highest frequency. So it's a tiny, tiny, tiny wave that's moving super, 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 super duper fast. That is the singularity. That is my dog barking. Cheeky, thank you very much. That is what is located here at the convergence point of all of these fingers of divinity. That's a very bumpy arrow, but you understand, all pointing inwards towards that same convergence point. And all of those arrows of infinity are all you. They are all self-state. They are all you coming from different directions, and you defining yourself, just different definitions of you coming together into the same convergence point, or the same culminative moment of not time space, but something that is beyond time space. It's where all roads meet in that center point. And this begins to matter when we start to define self, or this begins to, I should say, become significant when we start to define self, because this whole teaching today is about organic in contrast with inorganic self, but it is all self-state. So when I originally recorded the materials, it was about making a distinction and coming out of the world of conversation that humanity was having about our lower ego self versus our higher self state, and kind of achieving some communication between these two things through the central clearinghouse, or the CPU, quote unquote, central processing unit of your heart. So in a computer, even though of course we are all beyond computers, but I use this language as a common lexicon to be able to talk about these concepts. Your CPU, or central processing unit, are the microprocessors that are inside of the body of your computer that all of these signals come through. Like the signals from your mouse or your keyboard, input comes through there. And of course, output comes out of there, everything that comes to your screen or to your speakers. It's the same thing in your experience. Oh, Lyson has a great question. I'll get to that question in a minute. So your heart chakra in your body being here, the layers of your being that we define as you, it's your central processing unit in the sense that the signals that are coming from the higher dimensional, less dense realms converge and come down through your heart and then are experienced in what has formerly been defined as this slice of reality structure that is known as a human being, the physicality, mammalian emotions, and cognitive abilities. And again, this is recap, all of those things are exemplified in the biological evolutionary structures of your neurology as your brain stem, the basic reptilian structure that keeps you breathing, like it keeps you alive. Like if a person can be dead in their mind, you know what I mean? Like they can be almost brain dead, but if you have neural activity in your brain stem, your heart continues to beat, your breathing continues on its autonomic, automated breathing structure. And this is also just the level of pure reproduction, of being able to just keep the species alive. So it's just staying alive, and also reproducing and staying alive in that sense. On top of there is the mammalian cortex, which is where we have feeling structures, and feeling structures mitigate these basic staying alive tendencies, because otherwise we would all be like, I will kill you, I will stab you to death, or I will eat you, or I will, non-consensually have sex with you. And that is just the lowest level of being. But on top of there, we have mammalian emotions that mitigate all of that, that say, wait, perhaps I should not just consume or destroy or rape you. Perhaps I should instead work together with you in community, because I get more out of the safety of community, the safety and nourishment of community, the capacity to go further and be supported by others. And then on top of all of that, the cognitive abilities of being a human, which is the bumpy outer convoluted surface of our evolutionary designed biological structure. And of course, my words are forming a bridge, even though it's not necessarily my thought structure of believing in the development of evolution of your brain, but in the sense of neurological evolution of how humans and science look at things. They say, like, first organisms develop this, then they develop this, then they develop this. So we're just going with that as a narrative structure framework that we're working within at the moment, even though I will then describe to you how you actually developed. But humans are not alone in having a bumpy cerebrum that, it's kind of shaped like I said, like convoluted, like a folded up washcloth or something like that. That is the area of your brain and your neurological structure that contains what is known as human thought. And it also coincides, or is defined by, the solar plexus area, this level directly above your navel, but below your breastbone. And other animals have that convoluted cerebrum, like dolphins. Dolphins actually have more surface area. Like if you were to take the dolphin brain and stretch it out from being a crumpled up piece of paper, it would end up being a giant billboard. Whereas if you unstretch the crumpled up piece of paper of the human, it would just be like an 11 by 14 smaller piece of paper. Dolphin is a billboard. Humans are a smaller, legal sheet of paper. Dolphins have more convoluted surface space than humans do in terms of their cognitive ability. Dolphins in many ways can be defined as more intelligent, having a greater mind state than humans. But humans are, of course, right now observing and defining themselves. So I know I'm going a little bit far afield, but just in all of these ways, understanding like the human operator is being anthropocentric, human-centered, and weighing more heavily the human experience as opposed to the dolphin experience or the mouse experience or even the great whale experience, because you have to also understand that whales have giant, enormous brains, and that their convoluted surface area would also expand into a giant billboard. Think going too far afield. I'm going to redirect to Lyson's question. He says, can vectors be understood as timelines? The answer is yes, and hooray, and thank you for your beautiful perceptive question, because I love the thought structures of people that are here and how your intelligence is evident in the questions that you ask. So each one of those fingers of God or divine fingers of higher intelligence that are dimpling this fabric, each one of those is an ascension timeline. That as I talk in, like, if I draw that time vortex that's shaped like this, that has a central core timeline going up and down, that path of least likelihood that I spoke about last week as being exemplifying the characteristics that are who you are as a person when you are in alignment with divinity, with your higher self, being defined as whom you would be as God embodied here in this particular version of God that is your unique genetic structure and structure through time. That's who and what those different finger dimplings or directions or timelines are. So within one structure, oh, and I dug up one of my old sculptures. This is a chakra sculpture, but you can see it's partially chewed away because it's greenware, it's unfired clay. So it's been in my backpack and like thrown around a lot. So parts of it has broken off, but you can imagine with your mind that that's not broken off. And these dimpling structures as they go in like this and that, like this and like this. This is one chakra. Here, I'll hold it so that it's kind of, you see kind of like the unbroken parts. Here's one chakra that is in your body, but you understand that there's all of these timelines that are of divine timelines and perfection that are creating one chakra shape. So basically what you have are multiple self-state lives coming from different directions, that these are the ascended master timelines that all come together to create one perfected divine chakra shape. We would also call this a coherent light being or a coherent light form. We have many of these on our body. So this is the third dimensional representation of it. And I'll go back to this flat two-dimensional representation of it. But also you can see a simplification here because I just have one vertical red chakra, one horizontal orange chakra, when what we really have, I can show you a different drawing as an example of that. What we really have are these guys at 90-degree angles. My squinty scrolly faces, hold on a second, because I used like, this is a good example. This is a closer example. This is what we really look like, but I do different levels of drawings that all contain truth, but sometimes they are simplified. No, I did not choose the right one. Hold on a second. I'm faking you out. Sorry, guys. Choose a better picture that is more accurate, that contains what I'm actually trying to show you. Oh, well, this one will work just fine. Hold on a second. Now my screen is so full of things, I don't know what to click on. Hold on a second. Thank you for your patience. Okay, good. This is that beautiful picture of a glass painting that died a horrible death when it got smashed with a larger piece of artwork, like it smashed against it. I don't know why I always have to talk about like the sad thing that happened. I'm still processing it and it happened like 15 years ago. But the memories and the picture actually remains. What you see here is the flat two-dimensional representation of this third dimensional sculpture that is here. You can see the different vortex shapes, and you can also see the truth of what I painted in this painting, which is why it was so valuable to me. Within each chakra or collection of paths of least likelihood converging at infinity point singularity, you have 7 sublayers. So each one of these, let me just move the chat for the moment. Each one of these chakras or layers of being or stratifications of density that are created through the movement of your heavy bowling ball of consciousness through the fabric of space, time, and consciousness, contains within it 7 sublayers. So it's like saying you have a 7-layer cake, but each layer of cake has within it 7 layers. And those layers are all according to the harmonic octaves. The harmonic octaves, I'll play it on the piano. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and then all of that adds up to white. But on the piano keyboard, it goes back to C. It goes back to the original red chakra. And that is also how the octaves of your being go, where you begin with one octave that we define as the human experience, moving through this level of refinement of consciousness and of your soul. But as you get up to white light, what actually happens is a new vista expands, that you then find yourself within the next level of beginning a refinement process, closer and closer and closer towards the higher level. You started at here, but now you're going to refine yourself all the way up to here. And then eventually you're going to refine yourself all the way up to here. And then a note that will be too high that only dogs can hear. So you're continually on a journey of consciousness, refining itself closer and closer and more and more and more perfectly in alignment with that infinity point, with the definition of God, divinity, with, and of course, when I say divinity, I'm talking about a non-anthropomorphic God. And I stress that not in order to diminish human religion, but in order to make this more inclusive for those who might not be a particular religion, or might even find the religious teachings on earth right now to be antithetical in some way or off-putting in some way. This is an abstraction, so it is available to all creatures, all organisms. It is the God of atoms, consciousness, of molecules, of flatworms, of mycoplasmas, of humans, of planets, of star systems, of light itself, of abstractions, of otherworldly beings and interdimensional creatures. That level of abstract God, that we are on this journey of continually refining our trajectory and identifying with more and more. So we are just within this one particular slice of the frequency pie that is known as being a human, and we are moving from this note up to this note, and this is the visual representation of that journey. And within each note structure, you have 7 layers that you are moving upward through. So wait, let me just drink a little bit. Again, I get so excited here. What you're looking at also in terms of this pure energy level of your being and the stretchy fabric of the cosmos is our thought forms. And thought forms are alive. And you are also looking at coherent light beings, and coherent light beings are alive, and they surround and interpenetrate you, and they are not separate from or different than you. Hold, let's see if it'll give me an annotation. Hold on. Because I want to draw something. Wait, I'll go back to sharing. Now you see my face. Now you see the picture. This is what this teaching, there we go, annotation. That is what this teaching is really all about. So wait, first I'll draw, here's like a human stick figure, right? You live here, and you have 2 arms and 2 legs and 1 head. Generally, that is how most of us are shaped. Some people are shaped differently. You have around you this coherent light structure. Coherent light, means that all of the peaks and all of the troughs are in unison. All of the ups and all of the downs are united together. There are dance movements that work together, as opposed to, now I will draw non-coherent light. This squiggle goes this way, this squiggle goes this way, this squiggle is going up here, this squiggle is going over here. That is mostly how light is emitted from, let's say, a light bulb or any other light source that is not a laser. So I went through this in class the other day. A laser is light that has been organized and has coherence to it. The waveforms stay together. They're like a marching band, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. And as they go through the experience of time and space, they do not disperse. They stay together like a marching band going in one direction, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. That is what coherence means. Coherent light beings are literally who and what we are if we define ourselves also as these higher levels of light and awareness that surround our physicality body. And that's also our journey in refining ourselves and redefining what the octave of human density can be. That we are coming from this level of saying, I'm over here in the red zone. The red zone is physicality. It is the I am structure, and it's part of our physicality presence. And again, I'm going to give you the true story of how you got here, or not true, but like the contrasting with objective materialist story. What we're doing is beginning to redefine our existence outside of that level of density to encompass, let's say, from here up to here and beyond. Like this is going in this direction. We're going to get even a little bit higher and more refined than just violet. We're going to move up to even higher level of octave. So what I'm trying to say is we're shifting the encompassment from denser physicality all the way up to violet, our connection to the divine, to we're not negating denser physicality, but we are recognizing that we're no longer only associating or affiliating ourselves primarily with this level of experience. This has everything to do with what is ascension, what is the ascension process, and what is everyone talking about when they talk about, for example, 3D or 5D. They're talking about density. Now I want to just make a pop culture silly reference. I'm your density. Like I didn't understand for the longest time that people were talking about 3D, third density. I thought they were talking about the third dimension. And when we were talking about getting out of the third 3D, I'd be like, wait, you don't want to get out of 3D because you want to still have a 3D body. You want to have a cellular structure body. Do you understand? Like I was having verbal conflict with people's conversations because if you get out of the third dimension and having a third dimension cellular body, it means you're dead. Like that's not necessarily good. Like it would be like saying like, yes, now you are just purely defined as a non-corporeal being, that the third dimension is corporeality. But what people are really talking about, and I actually had to have someone explain this explicitly to me because I'm so literal. They're like, no, Aurora, we're talking about the third density. So when I talk about the third density, what we would be talking about is a focus on the mundane reality, physicality presence, Newtonian physics, the laws of physics, the five senses, and the definition of the world as objective materialism. In the science experiment of your life, the stratification would be the lowest, but not the worst, just the lowest level of density, that is where we're coming from. And then we are refining our consciousness upward from those levels of density into higher dimensional, less dense realms. But now I'm going to get into my notes. I haven't even gotten to my notes yet, guys. I'm 38 minutes into class. What's the real true story, or my insight-based story of how you developed into physicality structure? So far from the evolutionary biological definition that said, yes, organisms first developed the brainstem, and then millions of years later, they developed mammalian characteristics, and then your genes changed, and you developed the cerebral cortex that is known as humanity. What I see happening is you exist as thought form, coherent thought form, predating or pre-existing the coalescing of matter self-state known as your physical body structure. And let's say that my arm right now exemplifies that potentiality of pure thought form that is pure energy. And what you did was in your parents' womb, your mama's womb, you stuck your arm down through the dimensional portal, the way that like you make cotton candy, where you put like kind of like a stick or a cardboard into the cotton candy making machine. My arm is the cardboard, and I put it down into the cotton candy making machine of the mother's womb, even though I'm a walk-in and I didn't do this, so I had to learn about this. But you guys did this, and then you coalesced matter, moved your non-physicality structure, your coherent light body structure around in the world of stuff known as matter, potentiated these waveforms into matter, and matter accreted and accumulated on that energy structure, like an armature in sculpting. When you build a metal sculpture, in sculpture, my brain's not working. In sculpting, you build a metal armature, which is like a skeleton, and then you slap clay or plaster or whatever on top of that. This is your armature that you put down into reality. That is an energy structure. And upon that energy structure, you coalesced the matter, the clay of matter. But I want you to also understand and recognize and claim that the matter that you coalesced into a body in terms of gestating a presence that could become your baby infantile body, that you could then be birthed into this world. You're much, much more than just like the pickles and ice cream and tacos or whatever your mom ate when you were pregnant. And I mentioned those things jokingly because pregnant ladies crave these different types of foods, that you're more than just pickles and ice cream, okay? You're more than just whatever were the food items that your mom ate and that was available in her bloodstream for you to be like, oh, I'll take a molecule of this and a molecule of that, and that's what I'm going to put onto here. Because that's the very materialistic view of where material items come from. We're doing a quantum or higher dimensional coherent light understanding of where the matter of your body being even came from, that it wasn't just a question of taking what's available in the floating around matter of this world and then conglomerating it together. And then it's like, look, I now have a body and I'm made out of 10% pickles and 5% ice cream, and then all of these other things, that mashed potatoes, whatever mom craved. You're more than that. You literally used your quantum observership, for lack of a better word, but your capacity to bake the batter of potentiality of fifth dimensional and higher waveforms into physicality structure. The ovens in front of your eyes took the fifth dimensional and higher potentials of existence and you created matter with your observership, with your awareness, with your experienced submersion in the world that we call space-time, or the space-time continuum, with consciousness as another ingredient there. You literally baked the bread of reality structure that then became part of your body. You created the matter of your body and coalesced it around the armature of your consciousness in order to create a form that gestated into what we know as human body, in order to then have not only a container for your consciousness, but a re-emitter of light. So it's both things. It's the chicken and the egg story. Because as I'm talking to you about this from my notes, I'm telling you, you have a physical self state that has non-physical coherent light forms that are in a symbiotic relationship with you, and you're in a partnership where you have your physical material, somatic, cellular self that needs to eat physical food and be sustained in the definition of what it is to be human in this world. And you also have your coherent light body, light form presence that supports your physicality structure, but your physicality structure also supports your non-physicality structure, or your world of pure thought. So the answer is, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And the teaching that I'm giving you is that both and. So you initially originated as a coherent thought form, as a thought structure, as an aliveness that did not yet have a body. And your aliveness that did not yet have a body had structure, and it was like going down to the cotton candy machine, and it made matter all around it, and the matter became a fetus that could then become a person, and you came out as a person. But your personhood and your cellular structure, for example, your pineal gland is the physicality structure that emanates the chakra structure at this level of your being, that is an energy field. So did you have an energy field before you came into physicality? Yes, you did. Then you came into physicality, and then you emitted from your physicality the coherent light form structure. So you had structure, you gained materiality, and from your materiality, you then emanated structure. All of this in terms of a journey, that's my little dog playing down there. All of this as a journey is about gaining coherence in terms of what you emit. Because you're kind of like, well, why should I go through all of Aurora? Why should I go through all of this difficulty, not difficulty, but like all this rigmarole? Like, I had a coherent light body, then I got a physical materiality body, then my materiality body emitted a coherent light body, and then I moved up the octave and redefined myself purely as a coherent light body. Like, why did I do this? And the answer is that it is all part of your journey of refinement of consciousness, that you have more coherence coming out of these levels of embodiment and materiality, and kind of refocusing yourself as a coherent light form than you would have if you had just been like, I'm a coherent light form and I never took on an embodiment, and I never had the experience of being in matter, and then never had the experience of coming out of materiality. This is literally the question of, why were you born? Like, mommy, daddy, why was I born? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Why was I born? These are like primary existential questions. And this also goes down to red level root chakra teachings. And we'll go back to the share screen. Red level, where I'm hovering my cursor over here in one moment, I'm squiggling my cursor over here all the way on the side of the screen. red level root chakra questions. This area of the body, root chakra, says I am, and questions about basic existential questions come in this area of the body, and it is exemplified in the base of your spine, your pelvis, and all the way down, emanating from your hips, all the way down your legs to the tips of your toes, and where you connect with and walk on the planet. That's all root. Here's the pelvic structure in the analogy of my hand. And then here's your hips emanating downward. And then here's where my fingernails are, your little feet. And you're walking on the surface of the planet. All of the walk that we do, walking on the surface of the planet, this is all root chakra stuff that we are learning about being in existence. I am, I exist. Why do I exist? How do I define my existence? Why do I have a physicality body? These are questions that we might ask when we're like little tiny children. Mommy, daddy, where did I come from? Mommy, daddy, how did I get here? Mommy, daddy, why do we exist? But then often we don't have answers for that. And we continue, you learn by left foot, right foot, you walk along and you learn why you are here. So why are you even here? Why are you not just this unclothed armature of spirit that has not yet developed a sleeve of matter, that has not yet become an embodied person? Many times people right now are in conflict because they're like, I don't like being here. Like I just made like an angry defensive body posture. I don't like being here. There are unpleasant things. There are sufferings and pain. And I'm making like an ironic, funny face about it, but you understand what I'm talking about. The kind of attitude, like, I think that it's better just to be without a body. And, I'm ironically saying this, to just not have to deal with all these different things of like finding food and having pain and having to pee and poop and all this different stuff. Like that's all root chakra stuff that you have to use it to stay alive. Like, why do I have to do all this stuff to stay alive? Why should I even be alive? Our definition of what it is to be alive. So our definition of what it is to be alive, according to science, and now I'm getting into my notes a little bit, is to have a physical bio-body suit, a physical presence that has metabolism, meaning stuff goes in and stuff goes out. So science's definition of an organism that is alive means you eat and then you emit either energy or waste products or some combination of both of those things, as opposed to let's talk about like a mineral state, like grab a crystal. Here's a crystal over here. You're like, does science define this little octahedral crystal as alive? Well, it doesn't eat physical food and it doesn't, need to have its diaper changed or poop something out. So science would not say that this is alive, but I say that this is an alive presence and it is part of the mineral kingdom of aliveness. So I say yes. And I also say light and photons are alive. Like if I point out my window at the true sun, the true emitter of light in the sky, all of that light is alive. All of it is sentient. All of it has a presence. It has a physicality presence. And just like us, it has the other notes on the scale that are the non-physicality presence or the pure unembodied level of self. So what we're actually doing here in our alive state, so your body is alive, it takes in food or it takes in energy and it emits energy or emits something else, and it has homeostasis. Homeostasis means a balance, like something that keeps you alive. So a balloon has a balance in that it has the same amount of air pressure that is keeping it inflated on all sides. You stay, in balance. So you're able to take in a certain amount and emit a certain amount. I take in 10 units, I emit 10 units. So I stay at homeostasis. The sun and other stars, sun stars, are alive, they are metabolic, and they achieve homeostasis. What do you mean, Aurora? Like, what does the sun eat? What am I talking about? The sun has a pressure that is a gravitational pressure that is, from its massiveness, from being so much stuff collected together, a force that is a crushing inward. Like you could see my muscles, I'm like crushing inward, I'm crushing inward, I'm crushing inward. At the same time, the sun has, and the stars have, an expansion part of their metabolism that is the sending of light outward. I'm expanding and I'm pushing and I'm sending and I'm also releasing. I'm sending light and consciousness and releasing possibilities and probabilities, expanding outward. So sun stars have a balance, a homeostasis of both the crushing inward force and the emitting or the expanding outward force. And that maintaining that homeostasis is considered, quote unquote, the lifespan of a star. If it goes out of balance, if it's no longer sending outward, like I'm inflating myself, I'm breathing in, I'm like pushing outward, I'm releasing outward, I'm sending outward. If it's no longer on that great inhale breath and it kind of starts to not send outward like that, what happens? The crushing inward force becomes the stronger force, and the reality structure around it starts to crush inward. It crushes inward so much. You can see my muscles engaging. I'm crushing inward so much. I'm crushing inward so much. It collapses into itself and it becomes what is known as a black hole. All of those God fingers or all of those divine presences pressing inward completely, all of this energy presence, a pressure of consciousness that in the star then collapses into itself infinitely inward on its journey. This is known as the death of a star, but it is really the end of the homeostasis level of that architecture of light emission. And it also represents the beginning of a new chapter in terms of consciousness of that star. So it is not the end, like, boom, I'm chopping you off, that's the end. It is the end of definition of that level of consciousness as self. I don't know if I'm getting like too up there, out there with this, but I really wanted to go there because I say that in my song, Symphony of Life, even stars can die. And that's it. It is not the sense of kaput. That's it. You were a star. Now you're done. You're kaput. You're out of here. Not like that at all. It is the sense of an end of a chapter, the end of the definition, the end of that octave, but beginning of the next octave. It is an infinite journey. So even as a star, you might have a limited lifespan, although stars have such a grand lifespan that it is okay, like if you look at the length of time that our universe has been in existence, and universe is one timeline, universe, as opposed to the entire cosmic architecture. But if you say that the universe, according to science, is like 28 billion years in potential, this side of your screen to this side of your screen, some stars are so long lived that they were born at this side of your screen, and we're here now kind of like in the middle age, in the prime of your life, I say, prime of your life in terms of the age of the universe, and none of them have died yet. Like many stars have been born and died, because the stars that have been born and died emitted the calcium that is presently in your bones. Why does birth and death happen? Mommy, daddy, why do things die? Because out of those deaths come rebirths and renewals, that there is this amazing crushing together and explosion and atomic factory, elemental factory, according to this materialistic definition of how things are made, that creates things like calcium and other elements that then become what we are. So we are partially made up of the former experiences of stars that had shorter lifespans, that have already birthed, homeostasis, collapsed in on themselves, gone on their cosmic journey, and then left behind a transformed state of matter that we then use for our bodies, for our sustenance, for our journey. P.S. It's all self-portrait. It's all you. It's all self-state. So that was you living as a star that has born and then come to the end of your trajectory and then emitted something that then you as self-state here are now using to be born and to maintain yourself in homeostasis. And then let's talk about where you're going. Physical metabolic death, possibly, and or redefining self by moving up the octave to now encompass that as your new human octave, and redefining everything that you brought here as matter, or you created or coalesced as matter, as light again. So you came here as a light being, coalesced a lot of matter, slowed down light into matter, used it as your body. And then the regular way of doing things is that, like, by corporeality, you're going to fall over dead. You will rot in a grave. Worms will crawl in and out of you. They will play pinochle on your nose. They will, you will decompose. You will rot away. But a different way of understanding what is possible is reabsorption of that matter into light state, taking of that matter that is mind matter that you emitted as mind state, as mind self, into physical corporeality, and taking it and making it go faster on an energy metabolism, faster, until it becomes light again. And then taking that light with you on your journey. That literally then what you're doing is coming here, kind of scooping up matter, which is slowed down light and potentiality. And then instead of being like, oh, just going to take my hand out of that glove, I'm going to go off on my journey, I'm going to leave the glove behind, taking that glove and raising it to a higher energetic metabolism. And then as you raise it to a higher energetic metabolism, you are able to bring it with you, travel, bring those collected everythings with you on the journey. You're elevating matter to the higher self state. But that is really why you're here. Why should I go through all of this rigmarole of becoming embodied, becoming clothed, if you are just here to experience and then drop your body and then go off on your journey? Like, there's the soul refinery, there's value in having emotional experiences, there's value in all of that. I don't want to devalue anybody who has ever died. It is part of the sacred journey. When I talk about this vortex, again, you're not a bad person if you have hit the levels of the membrane of death, but really you quote unquote win or are successful when you have learned how to navigate the time vortex by going up the central core timeline. What is the experience of going up the central core timeline like? What happens with your body? Your body is redefined as a body of pure light. So we now understand that there becomes no longer a bifurcation between self state that is at the lower levels of frequency, lower levels of density, lower levels of notes, and the higher levels of notes that are up here. They become one seamless continuum with energy oscillating back and forth, up and down throughout this whole ladder of consciousness. Impulses coming from the sun, stars, and pure light, circulating down into matter, physicality, and circulating in an endless, unbroken loop back up toward the source that emanated you and the pure light that emanated you. And you become redefined as one light being. Wait, let me drink a little bit of water. I know there's lots of questions and comments. I'll get to that too. Okay, your bio bodysuit, I'm looking at my notes if it looks like I'm looking over here, has been defined as having metabolism, having homeostasis, consuming and sending out energy. Stars do this too. Stars consume energy and send out energy. They send out possibilities and probabilities and thought waves and consciousness and neutrinos and photons and all of that to us. Yes, it is the most commonly form of recognized life here now, but like I was talking about, minerals or photons or stars being not necessarily recognized by the five senses form of science here. The inorganic realm. So that's organic life is your physical cellular structure and your bio bodysuit and everything that needs to eat food in order to stay alive. But you also have coherent light body that is also part of you. That is the inorganic or purely energy level of your being. It would be defined as your spirit, the higher dimensional self, the thought form of who you are, the astral realm, and the origin of thoughts as living beings. Wait, let me drink. Astral in its root word means of the stars. Astral in our experience of the levels of density of reality is the level that is kind of in between, a membrane in between the human cognitive thought structure and everything else that is higher self. So I experience the astral realm as like a type of stretchy membrane, a dream world, an interim world, hallway or interface between different levels of reality. That is the place where we have emitted cognitive anthropomorphic thought forms into that realm of pure thoughts, and we are moving through it as we get up to these higher levels of density. You go into the astral realm when you're in certain states of dreaming or waking reverie or psychedelic states or death. And that you don't necessarily have to die in order to go into the astral realm. Like, you don't necessarily have to have a physical metabolic death of your physicality body to go into the astral realm. However, when many people in their alive state go into the astral realm, they have the death journey, which is considered also the hero's journey of, sometimes it is an ego death, or it is the death of the person of who you are, the redefinition of who you are. That's what I mean when I talk about going from one octave into the next octave. It is a redefinition of self, and it has to do with letting go of previous thought structures and emotional truths that defined who you were, whom you were, and then a redefinition of whom you were. The astral realm is also a realm of when I say thoughts are alive, so this is big. I know I'm jumping around a lot. And I'm also just really focusing on the level 1 stuff. Just honestly, I knew I was not going to get to level 2 stuff today. So I'm just allowing myself to like free reign to just completely delve into level 1 stuff. What is the astral realm? It is a realm of pure thoughts. Thoughts are alive beings. Thoughts are like my architecture armature, my arm before it is clothed with flesh. Thoughts exist as potentialities and presences independent of your neurology. This in contrast with objective materialist science that says that thoughts purely are the end result phenomenological thing that arises from your neurology, your fatty brain, your fatty idea catcher up here. Your brain is your fatty idea catcher because your brain and your neurology, they're covered in these myelin sheaths that are made out of fat. Fatty idea catcher, that's what I call it, because thoughts are like neutrinos. Neutrinos are super high energy particles. You could think of them as analogous to these neutrinos. Neutrinos fly around and they fly right through matter. Like right now we have we have whole streams of neutrinos that are all flying through us. And what science does in some of these experiments is it sets up tanks that can kind of catch as waveforms, as I was speaking about last week, the idea of having a completely unperturbed tank that has particles that flow through it that are time-space vectors that leave a wake in their leave energy wake in their transit. That science does these experiments where it creates a tank, sometimes deep underground or a place where there are not many neutrinos, and that the tiny high energy particle flows through that tank and it leaves a waveform that can be perceived so that the neutrino is implied by its footprints or its presence, what it leaves behind it, so that you can see that it's there. Thoughts are analogous to neutrinos, but not exactly synonymous with. They are tiny high energy particles of potentiality. They are living things. They're flying around or floating around out there, up there, around, looking for a medium. Well, they are traveling through the medium of potentiality, but they're looking through the medium like your own neurology to be able to fly through and become alive or vivified or brought into existence. That when I talk about the banquet of thoughts in your life, that you're being presented like at a banquet or like with waiters with hors d'oeuvre trays. Like, would you like some of these thoughts, sir or madam? Would you like some of these thoughts? Would you like some of these thoughts? Would you like some of these thoughts? And that is totally up to us, the person with the fatty idea catcher, to choose which thoughts we identify with as self-state and feed as if they are our children or our offspring or our art projects that we wish to bring into being. So some thoughts are negative and some thoughts are positive, in the sense that some thoughts bring us in alignment with our true self-state as ascended master and bring the ship of our consciousness into that aligned, perfect chakra up and down position. And some thoughts make us fly towards the membrane of death. So as I am the waiter, the server of the cosmos, and I bring to you a tray, I'm like, these beautiful canapes over here will bring you towards an ascended mastery state of greater coherence in your light body, thought form body. These will send you towards the membrane of death. And then you can make very clear choices like, well, I'll take crunch, crunch. Like I'll take a bite of this and a bite of this, but no thank you on that and no thank you on that. And that's how I did for many years, my inner work in my mind. Instead of being like, I fight against you, I hate you, like, get out of my mind. I would be like, just no, thank you. No, thank you. Would you like these crap thoughts? No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm just simply not hungry for those. I'm joking at the debutante ball here. But the no, thank you helps in the sense of not giving energy presence to those thought forms that are unhealthy in the sense of your own particular journey towards ascended mastery, or the larger meta context, meta meaning overarching, the living being that you live within that also wants to align itself perfectly with perfect thought perfection, that if you eat those thoughts, you head towards the membrane of death. The larger ship of consciousness within which you find yourself also heads toward the membrane of death. Like all of these, if cells of your body, to use an analogy, start thinking in the wrong direction and start getting sick, the totality of your being starts to go in the wrong direction and get sick. So if your shoulder is deciding like, I'm going to eat all the crap thoughts off of the canapé dish, I'm going to eat the crap canapés. Sorry, I'm being so vivid here. and then bring thought, shoulder cells are going to like go towards the membrane of death. It's like, but wait a second, like you're a part of me. And if you're going, or the earlobe cells or whatever, if you're going towards the membrane of death, then I'm going towards the membrane of death. We're all going down together. So it is absolutely essential on all of these nested layers of fractal being to make these choices, to think the thoughts and vivify or lend life force energy to the thoughts that bring us towards greater longevity. That is it. That is the definition of what you want to eat as food, as opposed to what you do not want to eat as food, as thought food. So there's this lesson, I'm only on part one, has two parts, the part about organic and inorganic life, and then also the teaching about food. Right now, we're talking about what thoughts you want to eat as your food, because there's the server that is bringing around your hors d'oeuvres in the cosmic debutante ball. Some things you want to eat with your mind, some things you don't want to eat with your mind. Just as I made the analogy, there's coherent thought waves, laser light, thought forms that are perfect and divine that exist at large in the cosmos. And when they come into your fatty idea catcher, which is like a tank that these things fly through and they leave a waveform, a wake form behind them, you can be like, oh, I like the harmonic music. Wait, I like the divine perfection. That sounds perfect. It's a chord. It's divine perfection. It sounds fantastic. It feels fantastic. I like those thoughts. I'm eating those canapes. They nourish me. They keep my body alive. I go in the right direction. I do not hit the membrane of death, as opposed to cover your ears. Those thoughts are not harmonic thoughts. Those thoughts are disorganized sound forms. And I showed you disorganized light forms. They have light that goes hither, thither, and yon, all mixed up together. Not necessarily evil, but disorganized. When those are presented to you, you can say, no, thank you. That does not seem like organized thought. It does not help me to be more coherent. I do not wish to think those thoughts, have them come inside of me, have them live inside of me as alive creatures. And when you nourish or support something in the sense of your energetic metabolism by thinking about it, you nourish thoughts by thinking them. They're like your little babies, your little children. I don't know if any of you are parents. I'm not a physical parent, but I'm a non-physical parent of thought forms. And I recognize that the thoughts that come inside of me, I can be in partnership with them. And I can be like, you come inside of me and I'm going to think about you and I'm going to nourish you into being. And one example of that is something like the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, or an art project, or a song. Like that painting is a thought that I had, that I invited into the womb of my mind to gestate. And I said, yes, I want to give birth to you. And then I thought about it, learned about it, did sketches with my actual physical somatic body, and then painted it into existence. So we do these things also. I'm talking about a literal painting, but you paint into existence certain experiences. A thought can be something like, how about to use the example, a negative thought, a crap canapé, the thought of having a car accident on the road. That thought can come into you. Here's the thought. Do you want to think about getting hit by a Mack truck on the road? And let's say you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to eat that. And you eat it and it tastes terrible. It gives you anxiety and fear. It brings you from alignment and divinity and perfection towards the membrane of death. And if you think about it enough and energize it enough and have enough of a conversation with it in your mind, you can actually make that reality happen. That could be true for eating the Mack truck canapé, the cancer canapé, the getting stabbed by a maniac canapé, the nuclear war canapé, the anything that you don't actually want, that's not actually a longevity thought structure, even the living a mediocre life canapé, like you're just going to work in a stupid job that you hate, and then one day, become decrepit, like you'll walk like a bent over person, and then one day you will fall over and die. Even that hors d'oeuvre is not a very fun or nourishing or delicious tidbit to eat. I offer you other levels of thought structure, and I'm articulating them. They come inside of me and I articulate them to you. I'm like, well, I'm going to read the menu for you. Here's another nourishment that you can eat on the menu of life. Here's the one that says, well, you don't have to chronologically age as you move through chronological time. I like that. That's nourishing. That's delicious. I like that thought. How about here's another one. Death is not inevitable. Like, a new flavor. I've never actually tried that one. Yes, this is a gelato that is called the You Don't Have to Die gelato, and it tastes so good. I invented that. No, I didn't invent that flavor, but I'm reminding you of that flavor from an ancient time. Like, I haven't tasted that in a long time. Let's do the immortality gelato. That sounds wonderful. And then there's the living a fulfilled life, where you are able to consciously navigate as opposed to have something else determine your trajectory through time. The living an empowered life, where you say, instead of living a world of mediocrity or less in terms of my quality of life experience, I can, where's my pencil with an eraser? I can either write the events that I wish to experience or erase the events that I wish to experience. This is the hors d'oeuvre thought structure of non-determinism, of pure free will. So here you can eat the puff pastry of determinism. That's like, someone else wrote the story of your life. You're just here experiencing. You're just the stupid person that drives the car and drinks the coffee. And then, yeah, if a Mack truck is going to come in your path that day, you're gonna die. You're gonna get smashed on the highway and die. I'm like, ugh, that's not a very nourishing puff pastry. That's just not very good for your metabolism, because it is all about the disempowerment structure. Even though some people find a sense of comfort in it, like shrug and make a face. Not my job. Someone else made this happen. Oops, like now I'm dead. So it's someone else's fault. Or you can eat the empowerment pastry. That's like the wonderful cannoli that says, you are here as the author of your journey. You are here in concert with your higher self state. You are here actively choosing which thoughts you ingest, and that those thoughts literally transform your genetic behavior, literally transform your trajectory either towards or away from the membrane of death, literally have an impact on the genetic, physical, cellular expression of your body in either health states, anti-health states, disease states, or where you are in the actual map of time. It's everything about what you're thinking and feeling. And all of that comes down to these basic choices of, hi, I'm circulating around the debutante ball of the cosmos. Which of these thought structures do you wish to eat? Those thought structures exist around us in our energy field. There is actually no separation between your thought body, your energy body, your pure body of pure spirit and pure potential, and your physicality structure. And this is the whole idea. You're supposed to be in a divine, beautiful, innate partnership of these levels of your own being. I'm not even going to make a separation state now to say your higher self, your lower self, you're this self, you're that self. It's all you. It is all you. And you are literally here caring for yourself on your journey. I will get to all of your questions and comments. That you want your non-physical aspect of self that is made of pure light wants to care for and love and be caretaker for your physicality state. Really, really, really big. You want to think yourself continually alive, think yourself continually healthy and vital, think yourself as having a longevity moving forward in a positive direction eternally through time. And your physicality state wants to care for and feed positive energy into your non-physicality state. And that will get into a little bit the teachings on food and what conscious mindful eating is like. Because when you eat a physical food, like I do, I have anything around here. This is dog food. I can't eat dog food. Sorry, I have here. I have some nuts over here. Okay, so this is physicality food. A tree. Wait, my dog is getting all excited. Hold on, because she hears a bag rustling. A tree had a conversation with the sun emitting its metabolic thought structures of possibilities and probabilities into the world. And it had this conversation with the sun stars for over a year, and it developed these nuts that are called pecans. And this is the end, first of all, this is the end result of this beautiful conversation that was had between a tree and the sun stars, and also the earth presence that is here too. And as a result, I can ingest their conversation, the nourishment of that conversation into my body. And what I can do is refine, this is thought structure or idea structure or pure data that has been solidified as what humans call nuts. And then what I can do is use the refinery of my body being, my physical metabolic structure, which is a supernatural or miraculous apparatus, refine it back into its pure light, pure consciousness structure. And that is what we do in terms of feeding our light body. So eating mindfully is a direct recognition of the fact that this is made of light, food is made of light, you are made of light. When you eat, you are beholden to the one who gives you light, which is light itself, which is self-state coming from a different direction, moving at a different rate. This is very big. This is unity consciousness talk here. So all of the levels of being that are your pure light being self, they're all individuated selves. Like there is the self of you that is this violet architecture or light being here. There is the self of you that is this indigo level here. There is the self of you all the way through all of these levels of being, a definition of an individuated part of yourself that coincides with, I'll just go back really fast to all of these layers of the cake of you. You're all of those people. Each one of these is an individuated person. Each one of these is an individuated, coherent light form. I need to bring this up and emphasize this because we are in this situation right now. Like I myself sometimes feel very in a struggle here in materiality, in being submerged in this world of matter. You can feel, it is possible to feel isolated, lonely, and cut off from the true source of light, especially when we start to understand that there are many things that are done as a concerted effort to cut ourselves off from or inhibit our beautiful conversation between either ourselves in matter and the world of pure light, which would be divinity, the sun stars, the world of pure photons, the world of pure cognitive ability or mentation, the world of pure mind. We have all these things that come between us and that direct connection, which would be like a divine world or a world of pure light. And some of it is technological, but not all of it is technological. Some of it is astral. When I get back to that sense of the membrane between our self as definition of self. Wait, I need to drink more matter here. Definition of self as matter and definition of self as light, that going across that membrane, it's a crapped up space. Sorry, it's the best way I can say it. There's detritus there, debris. There's thought debris. So thought debris would be defined as the things that are emanated from the embodied human realm that are not necessarily perfectly defined, coherent waveforms, that we are really beholden to light, to eating perfectly defined, coherent waveforms, and then refining it back into thought structures that we emit that are similarly divine, have longevity and vitality as a part of it. However, some of us emit, cover your ears, music that is like that. It's not that good. It's not that good. Some of the music, there's the thought structure that we emit. That's the detritus, and it's there. And as you try to go across the membrane, that is the astral world, it's like there's all this stuff, it's crapple. It's like flying through an asteroid field. There's like, it's a giant boulder there. There's a giant boulder there. Like you just want to be able to fly through, but there's all this stuff. And this giant boulder might be a boogeyman, a nightmare, something bad, a fear that you don't like or you don't want. Or it could be a religious thought structure. Like it's not necessarily positive or negative. These are the thought emissions as a result of being alive. Just like when you're alive, like, you have like dead skin cells that come off of your body. It is that end result of being alive. You have kind of these thought structures that come off of you, but in going across the astral, like, I'm flying through the asteroid belt. Like these things are denting, they're like denting my ship. They're like getting into me. They're coming against me. So it's a big challenge. There are religious thought structures. Doesn't matter, like from what you might be Judeo-Christian, you might be Hindu, you might be Buddhist Shinto, you might be atheist. There's even a boulder of atheism that you might encounter in the astral realm. It's a thought structure. All of these things are thought structure. How do you get past the astral realm? Largely it is through metabolizing up to the point of meditation and mindfulness. That is a frictionless state that I've spoken about in other teachings and other sharings of this class, and get up to this level of heart, which is beyond thought structure, and then everything else in the higher faculties that is on the foundation of the love tone, that's frictionless tone, that is made of this pure light that does not have boulders coming between you and your energy. So it's in many ways, the astral realm is populated by envisionments, projections, fragmentary thought forms, mostly, I mean, you would say that they are negative just in the sense that they are blockading you from eating pure light and from getting to those levels of pure light and divinity that you really want to connect with. But I don't want you to be, again, being like, get out of my way, I'll mortalize you. It's not that type of a thing. It's more like, no, thank you. No, thank you. Like flying past you, making a path, clearing a path, getting across the astral in order to get and break free of that membrane into levels of pure divine connection where you are pure light and you are connecting with pure light, and there's no inhibitory thought structure that is coming between you and that thing. So now I can remind us all, even though I was not here in this body in infancy because I'm a walk-in, but most of you guys were you gestated your bodies in your mama's womb, you were born in infancy, and you had the openness of your crown. That is the baby's fontanelle, the unfused skull plates that signify your inherent connection and openness to the divine or cosmic consciousness that slowly fuse together and mesh and close as we develop an ego identity, a sense of individuality, and verbalized language. This is mostly the journey that humans have been on in terms of becoming cut off from or separated from that oceanic, numinous consciousness that is unity consciousness, and then the coming back together, the reuniting, which is such a beautiful homecoming of individuated self state back to unity consciousness self state, which is when you get back to, I have to put down my little nourishments there, back to that central convergence point when you remember, aha, I am God, I'm God, I'm God, I'm God, coming from myself at all these different directions, that beautiful homecoming of how and what that happens. So you are beholden to the network of light. You are not beholden to or in an obligation to upholding the thought forms that are in existence on the astral realm. That's a big redefinition and unburdening, possibly, of any one of you. What are you feeding with your mind? Who are your thought children? Who do you want to think into existence? What do you want to think? And who deserves your energy? And my answer to all of this has to do with identifying self-state with pure light, as opposed to with fragmentary aspects of consciousness or undigested or unresolved experiences that might be on the tray of offerings at the debutante ball of life, but which you do not have to choose in order to be a part of your experience. That maybe they might even be quite insistent. They'll be like, well, I don't care. I'm going to jump into your mouth. You're going to eat me. You're going to think this thought whether you want to or not. And you can still do the firm no thank you. No thank you. No thank you to this thought. No thank you to this thought. No thank you to this thought. Flying and floating past all of these things, but not necessarily having to be like on a murderous rampage to destroy the negative thought processes and consciousnesses. And I laugh and overact at that because that is adding energy to them. So really, when we get into the concept of flying rainbow lasagna, what we're talking about is consciously in your body being on a genetic level with the dance of who you are, and as you move through time, space, and consciousness, sending some thought creatures to energy, energizing them, sending them to the totality, infinite journey self-state that you are on with you. Some of them de-energizing them, sending them into a restful state of entropy, non-beingness, non-moving, frozenness, non-volition, non-motivation, and non-perception. And I re-emphasize again, the entropy state, it should be achieved instantaneously. It shouldn't be like falling backwards, like falling infinitely backwards. It's not like supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be like fall backwards, boom, you're done. Because otherwise the falling backwards state would be like, like I'm doing this for a billion years. You don't want it to be like that because that's just more extended misery. So the entropy state is meant to be an instantaneous removal of energy from various thought forms that are non-healthy or non-longevity, non-vitality based thought forms that are coming between you as self-state embodiment and you as self-state pure light, and that we need to do something with so that they're not just floating around as detritus and debris in the asteroid belt astral field of foreverness, send them to entropy, which feels and looks like, not like fighting against them or something in that sense, but in the sense of rescinding energy from them. Ignoring is part of it, bypassing, not in a spiritual bypassing negative way, but just saying like, I'm flying past you, I'm allowing you, but not energizing you. But really entropy means taking back your light and your energy from those states that you really understand, like you're flying around within your own body, within your own mental body, within your own consciousness body, and that the debris and the stuff that's out there is largely stuff that you have ingested and re-emitted or emanated yourself. And so then the greatest level of personal responsibility is to be like, like I emitted that thought form, it's now blocking my way. Like I'm like vacuuming back or drawing back in my energy away from it, and it goes into a restful, peaceful state. And this entropy state, again, is not considered to be a form of punishment. It is not purgatory, hellfire, or brimstone, or the kind of, like I said, punishment is the word I keep coming up with, but like the world of punishment and reward that many people look at religion as, that they would look at something like you're a bad, wrong, naughty thing, and you're not supposed to be there, and punish you. Vindictiveness might be a word for it, but it is not that. And it's because this entropy state is created as a place of mercy and forgiveness, as a solution to the cosmic puzzle or cosmic math proof of what to do with those fragments of consciousness, what to do with that unwanted or undesired or non-coherent light. Coherent light. You are made of coherent light. Big teaching. You have a ton of assistance right now. You might be in a dark place or in a chaotic place, but you are not alone. You have a ton of assistance that is coming to you from your higher self. Your higher self would be also defined as yourself, as who you are as a perfected, divine individual coming from the future. Your trajectory is in reference to your current context in time from the future, but it's who you develop into being. These coherent light bodies that surround and interpenetrate your physicality structure and that are emitted by your present physicality structure, whom you are beholden to and whom are supportive of you, that's who you become. Spoiler alert, you become a coherent light being. And that also is like becoming a star. Coherent light beings coalesce together and make up a larger superstructure that becomes a star. So we'll get into like the life cycle of a star, but it's basically on the physical level, dust and gases in the terms of a potentiality nebula coalesce together as the pulling together force brings it together. And then the bringing together force begins to emit light. And you have the homeostasis of bringing together and also emitting light until it's no longer in balance. But on the consciousness journey, truth level, what happens is you start out with these questions and wonderings as you walk around, left foot, right foot, who am I, why am I here, and what is going on with all this, and you refine that matter state up to a coherent light form, light body state, when then you no longer have identify yourself as being submerged in matter, but you are occupying a different stratum of reality. Then you meet with others who are also no longer submerged in matter, who are identifying with a different level of coherency, and you all form together a band, like a symphony of life. And then that symphony of life begins to move on the larger network of star consciousness and, stellar brain. And then as you do that, you refine your consciousness even further, even to greater levels of coherency, until you become not only an experiencer of the music or the symphony of life, or an appreciator, like when you sit in the audience and sound waves flow over you and you're like, this music is so beautiful, this music is so beautiful, and then at the end you stand up and clap and you're like, bravo, bravo, like thank you to the musicians, that was so beautiful. And you're saying bravo to the stars, who are all you at a certain point transcend the audience level of experience and participation, and you become an emitter. And that's what it is to become a star, when you become this larger coherent light body that sends out light to others as part of this greater symphony of life. And it means that you've become a virtuoso, like you know how to play beautifully, you know how to integrate what you are with all of these other levels of music and harmonic perfection and divinity that's going on. And then as you have, it's a reciprocity that you have received from from the sun and the stars and traveled on that neurological network, you then achieve a greater, grander scale definition of self, where self state then becomes defined as the emitter. And then you are making that music. It's you playing the symphony of life to the experiencers that are in the audience. And it becomes a beautiful, like I said, a reciprocity. Like, I have ingested from you, now I give to you. So these are all levels of reciprocity. In the thought world structure, you give birth to your children of thoughts, that you say, I ingest these potentialities, like you get an idea. That's how we would say it from this perspective. I got an idea, bing, that I needed to do something or go somewhere or think something or say something to someone. And then I nourished that thought structure into being, gave birth to it, and had the actual experience. And then those ideas and experiences should feed back into you in a giant feedback loop and nourish you, hold you aloft, hold you buoyant, to kind of carry you on your journey to continue through time. This is what I mean when I say that you are beholden to light itself. I'm holding up that food again. When you eat food, you are beholden to, or in obligation to, the emitter of the light. It's like, thank you, sun stars, for emitting this light to me that I then take in as a form of matter, that I then emit as a thought form. That my food is literally feeding my emotional, tone when I send out your food and your mood, and also my thought form of what I'm thinking and what I'm emitting into the world. And so you're in a partnership, homeostasis of what you ingest versus what you send out. And on a larger self journey level, for a long time, just like when you're a child, for a long time, you take in from your parents, like your mother nourishes you through your breath, through her breasts, and then you take in food and you get all these little different tidbits. And then at a certain point, you become biologically mature and you can gestate your own baby, and then you are able to feed your own baby. But that's only after you have achieved adulthood and the capacity to do those things. So for a long time on our journey, we are the cosmic children. The sun and the stars and greater levels of coherent light forms are feeding us with structure and intelligence from the higher dimensional, less dense realms. And we take it in like, I'm learning. I'm like a little kid, and I'm eating and I'm growing and I'm becoming greater and more mature. And at a certain point, you become more mature, and spoiler alert, you become a star, just like the sun stars that are in the sky. And then you become a parent of other consciousnesses that you then feed, give out to, nourish, bring into being, and help them on their journey. And that's the beautiful reciprocity and role reversal is the word that I keep looking for. It is the role reversal that you experience. As you once were an eater, ingester, you then become an emitter in a very beautiful way of looking at things. I have more notes, but let me also get to this question. So Ross is asking, just to back up slightly, I know because I've already gone way down the road. So let's back up all the way to 11:26 a.m. Does every being's white convergence point ultimately lead to the same universal place point? Is there movement or time at that point? Two beautiful questions. So the cake of you, if I go back to this picture here, this picture, that is the 7-layer cake, and all of these layers of being add up to white light that would be over here at this end of your screen, and the higher level octaves. The question is, does every being's convergence point ultimately lead to the same universal place? The answer is yes. That white light, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, white light, that white light moment, back to me, where you connect from violet to white up here, that God moment, it's the singularity, or the source and the destination, and it's the same singularity for all of us. So the way that consciousness is arrayed, it is kind of like a dandelion head, like a dandelion seed pod that has all of these different vectors that go towards the center, but there is one central convergence point. So all of our many, many, many multiple lives, all of our many, many, many multiple fingers pushing the fabric of reality inward towards this spot, there's only one of this spot. It's God, it's infinity, it is the singularity, And that convergence point or singularity is the same point that is within each one of the chakras or energy centers of your body, within each one of us, within each star. I do this in almost every class lesson. My magical scarf of the cosmic fabric of the universe that I pull out of my sleeve as a magician. And I now tell you, yes, the dimpling of the fabric of the cosmos. Here's one dimple. Oh, I scared my dog with that. Here's another dimple. And they all come together. Here's another dimple. It's this endless folding of the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. And all of those little white dots converge at one little white dot. So when you draw this, you would almost draw it as like many, many, almost uncountable, multiple loops coming outward from here, having a journey in materiality, and then coming backward in towards here. Wait, let me just drink a little bit more. My beautiful structured water with potassium in it. To bring up another science thing, because this is kind of a science objective materialist, bridging teaching. There was a physicist, again, physics, the rules that dictate the red layer of reality, who was a theoretical physicist. His name was Richard Feynman. This is not an endorsement of every aspect of his being or his work, but he had an interesting idea that I think is worth considering in your intellectual food that's worth eating and bringing forward as a child of thoughts. The idea that there's only one photon, that throughout all time, space, and experience, there is only one photon, and that photon is continually emitted from the source of consciousness, has a journey outward into physical reality, and then you could think of it as returning on a loop trajectory or rewinding through time, but it goes back to the beginning and then is emitted again on a slightly different journey and comes back to the beginning and emitted again on a slightly different journey, kind of an endless embroidery of reality. And yeah, he did some very interesting alternative math explorations for that level of perception in terms of that. I think there's a basic cosmic spiritual truth that he was coming upon in that and then trying to translate it into math science talk. So the answer to that question, which is a great question, is yes, there is only one white light or highest note convergence point, and it is the same for all of us. And it is called unity consciousness. And I have a whole class teaching that's all about this, but basically when you get to that moment, wait, do it right on the piano. Ding, ding, I'm God. You're like, I'm God. And it's said in the first person. Each one of you, self-state, says it in the first person. Each cell in your body has its own self-sentience and has that I am God moment at the same time as you. I am God, said 1 trillion times by every single cell in your body. At the same time, the planet, at the same time, all of the stuff that's in the planetary ecosystem, at the same time, all of the other fractal aspects of self that are who and what you are when you look around and see like, this person and this person and this person and this person. I'm pointing to everybody who's here in the Zoom and onward and everybody who's not physically here in an actual video camera. I am God. And that is done in unison on a cosmic level. So you might have that realization on Tuesday, and you might have that realization in 10 years, and I might have that realization in 1,000,000 years, but it doesn't matter because through the magical folding of time, space, and consciousness of my magical reality rainbow scarf over here, all of those aha, I am God moments add up to and overlap in that same moment there. And that is the unity consciousness, and that is the homecoming, and that is the culmination, the culminative moment. And it is absolutely, the words breathtaking and astounding and profound and healing and all of the best words that I could possibly use to describe it are what it feels like. It is a profound remembrance and a profound redefinition of who you are, and it makes sense of and validates every single thing that you've done in terms of splitting self into individuality. It is the moment of fractal coming back together. The second part of your question is also very beautiful. Thank you for asking it. Ross asks, is there movement or time at that point? The answer is yes. There is both movement and time, but it is infinite movement and infinite time. So we are redefining, just like in the world of physics, when you stretch the stretchy fabric of reality to the point of being a black hole, the laws of physics, or the way that we define and perceive physical reality according to different math structures, like the laws of thermodynamics, the laws of gravity, the laws of this, the laws of that, all of that math structure breaks down and loses relevance and becomes a moot point at the level of infinite stretching of the fabric. And the same exact thing happens in terms of our definition of movement, because movement means relevant to context. But what is happening there is an infinite amount of energy that is moving infinitely fast. Like I showed, you have a dot, and the dot is the smallest little wavelength that it can possibly be. And it is also that's wavelength is tiniest, frequency is highest. You are moving at the fastest rate you possibly can. So a tiny little dot that's moving so fast, and it's moving at an infinite rate. So movement is relative to context. Just like if you've ever been in two cars driving on the highway at the same speed, and you're both going along at the same speed, and like it looks like that other guy isn't moving at all because you're both moving along at the same speed. Every single thing and thought structure and particle of energy that is at infinity is moving at infinite speed. So there is no context of anything moving slower than infinity in order to say, look, we're all moving faster than that thing that is moving slower than us out there. So yes, there is movement, but there's an infinite amount of movement, and there is no contextual relevancy. So you're not even able to perceive that movement. And same thing with time, because time, as we experience it in terms of linearity structure, is before, during, after, or some kind of contextual relevance of this is the first thing, and then here's where I moved here, and then here's where I moved here. But really what you have at that moment is a convergence and overlapping of every single timeline, every single possibility, every single probability, all happening at the same time. So you have infinite energy and infinite time, all occupying the same tiniest little dot that can possibly be occupied. I know it is a lot to comprehend. It requires like yoga of the perception, like stretch it on out, stretch your mind wings out a lot to be able to try to encompass what that is. Because it's hard to almost even comprehend what that would be like, but that is what it is like at that unity consciousness self state. And it's not the end of the journey, that it is an infinite journey. So it's not like, whew, like I jumped out of reality, I went down there, I became a person, I had all these experiences, I'm so exhausted, hooray, aha, I'm God, I got back home. And then just like, like then, nothing more. It's like, no, that journey is an infinite, endless journey of continuation. So that's what I mean, like the sense of endless looping, but looping in a positive sense, emitting and re-emitting in a positive sense, infinite self-state, infinite journey. None of this is a jail or a purgatory of your consciousness. All of this is like, hooray, like I get to be in existence. I get to be experiencing stuff. So that's how it's supposed to be, like a gift and opportunity, the homeostasis of consciousness. To say like a star has, I'm emitting, oops, I'm not emitting anymore, I'm collapsing into myself. But there's a sadness and end there. That infinity has no sadness and no end. You don't have to be like, oh, like I used to be this thing and then I stopped being this thing. You're like, I'm this thing, and I stay and I keep on being this thing, or keep on being this presence, I should say. You keep on being present. You are infinitely present. You're an eternal being on the eternal journey. Phoenix Rising then also has questions about stars and the lifespan of stars. You drink more. Good question. Phoenix Rising says, would the death of a star put it on the membrane of death, or would it equate to ascending? Such a beautiful question. The answer is, if stars do it right, they ascend, they go up the central core timeline and redefine what they are in terms of the chapter of self. I used to be this star and I was doing this stuff, and I went up the central core timeline and I went through the little tiny wormhole at the top, and now I expand into a new vista of new experience. That is the ideal state of transformation from lifespan into the next level of lifespan. But then, of course, we could say, what happens if things don't go exactly right? And that there are, the possibilities of gutter balls. Can stars have gutter balls? And I think that they can. I think that they can have partial deaths or unrealized states. And I think that that's what it is called when it becomes I want to say a neutron star. There is some type of a star where it kind of like collapses into itself, but then kind of like explodes outward again, kind of like collapses back into itself, like an incomplete death or a non-perfect level of transformative being that continues to kind of be in existence, but is not the totality state of a black hole. So I don't know everything about human definitions of astronomy and astrophysics, but I would say, yes, there are gutter balls in terms of stars, just like there are gutter balls in terms of stars coalescing into living beings. And one of them is called a brown dwarf that never actually emits light. That's a big one. The sense of like, like a stillbirth would be the analogy in humanity. In the birth of a star, a brown dwarf would be when energy and matter are coalescing, and that they're supposed to coalesce together and then create this, wow, profusion of light and sending of energy and light outward. But it's a partial coalescing that doesn't really get enough metabolism together to then emit light. And it becomes like a big, dense, heavy bowling ball of stuff that has a lot of magnetism and certainly goes around affecting things, and emits some infrared and some other stuff, but isn't a big, bright emitter. Brown dwarf, different experience than a radiant, radiative star. So these are all like, it's all an analogy. The same things that are happening to us in terms of our life, birth, death cycle are exemplified on the atomic microscopic scale and also on the scale of stars, and even larger on the scale of galaxies and on the scale of light being superstructures is what I would say. Question. So that is the answer. If you do life and death right, that what it really is ascension or redefinition of the octave of self, and that the materiality aspect of a star becomes redefined into pure energy and the portal of consciousness known as a black hole, which becomes a portal into a different level of beingness. The infinitely stretchy fabric of reality is stretched in a infinitely inward direction. That is the real answer to it. You drink a little bit more. And Ross has another question. It says, are thought forms that are more in line with the universal guide path more powerful and likely to manifest in reality? Awesome question. That comes down to energy and likelihood, and the answer is yes. So some thought forms have a coherence. They have greater potentiality, carry greater levels of energy, and have a greater level and ability and ease of manifesting into the physical reality. And some thought forms, my brain is really not connecting to my mouth today. Some thought forms are non-coherent. They carry less energy, like a music that's not a very good music. It does not carry very far and has a less likelihood of manifesting into reality. In terms of the time vortex shape of your life, the things that are on the periphery are the poorer constructed levels of music that have less coherence, less of a likelihood of manifesting into physicality reality, and they don't travel as far as either a note that I sing that would go on forever or a light that I emit that would go on forever. Those thought forms don't go on forever. They are temporal, temporary. Things that die and end on the membrane of death are temporal and temporary. The thought forms that are offered to you at the Cosmic Debutante Ball, some of them are temporal and temporary. They do not have a lot of coherence. They will not last a very, very long time. Some of them, like the ones going up my central finger, they will last a very, very long time. So we would say those are the ones that you would want to eat and that you would want to consume for your own longevity, and that you would want to emit into reality as longevity structures. All of this has to do with, in terms of our embodiment in time, a realigning with longevity structures. I wanted to say that like with echoes, longevity structures. Yeah, I'm getting a little silly. Longevity structures, like things that last for a long time, because those are things that bring us to the infinite journey. That culminative I am God moment is literally the thing that happens when you eat enough food of thought forms that are longevity structures, and you're made of longevity structures. And every thought that you think is a longevity structure that keeps you moving eternally, as opposed to a temporality structure that says, I ain't going to be here any longer, or this thing is going to end, or this is something that cuts that off and makes it no longer happen. So longevity structures are perfectly harmonically structured. The things that are on my fabric and the things that I paint over here, you can tell that there's symmetry. That's part of having a longevity structure. The conformity to these different harmonic principles. What is harmonics? Harmonics, I think I have already defined when you have these waveforms that are like circles or sine waves where they fit together and they touch tangentially perfectly. So they might fit together within each other like this. They might sit next to each other like this, but what they don't do is kind of like partially waves overlap. You have extras coming out the side, or in math, you could think of it as working with whole numbers, with whole integers. I should define it better. Whole integers, not fractions or decimals. So you would have like 1 + 1 = 2, or whatever, 4 divided by 2 = 2, but not 4 divided by 1.75, because that's going to give you fractions and decimals. All of those fractions and decimals, especially endlessly repeating decimals. Our ears don't like to hear endlessly repeating decimals in music. We're like, that sounds ugly to us. So that would be like a third is like 0.3 repeating infinitely, or 2/3 is 0.6 repeating infinitely. We don't like those. They don't sound good and they're not easy to work with in math. Sorry, there's loud things out my window right now. It's a gardener out there or something like that. We don't like those endlessly repeating numbers. And so those are not positive. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble focusing even because of the loud noise out there. Harmonics is when you have all beautiful whole integers that all divide by one another. So it might be like aspects of 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, and they all nest together within each other perfectly. Not like 2.3, 4.7, 18.22. Like those are all these fractions and decimals that are little extras hanging over the edge that do not sound good to our ears in terms of music and do not look pretty to our eyes. Like if you looked at a painting like that, where it would be like things, the circles not quite lining up, you would be like, that's not fractal and that's not self-symmetrical, and it's not a stable thought structure. A stable thought form is one that has all of these perfect circles harmonically aligned. And that's what we're really getting down to when we talk about what is a longevity structure in terms of thought and what is not a longevity structure in terms of thought. That things beyond the anthropomorphic interpretation level, like whether you're a good person or whether you belong in heaven, and I'm being facetious in my voice and all of that, it's about whether you're shaped correctly. All of these experiences are about going through a frequency door that you get through, or you are able to access higher levels of reality if you are shaped correctly. So you just get to be shaped correctly. And then also that's like the math homework of the cosmos. Like, did you get the equations right? If you did, please come inside. If you did not, I'm sorry, we'd love to have you come inside, but you're not shaped right. You can't get through. You have weird fractions and decimals going off 0.6 infinitely over to the side, that you need to work out your fractions and your decimals into your whole number, whole integers. It's integral. Your quantum. What is a quantum state? It is a packet that is not divided up into smaller packets. So you become a holistic, whole, integral being. That's what it is to be a coherent light form. Everything about this experience of moving from physical matter densification back into coherent light form is about re-achieving those levels of numeric perfection, where you are not a fraction or a decimal. Okay. So eating thoughts that are perfect thoughts, that are harmonically designed and perfect, like my fabrics and my paintings, will lead you to longevity. Don't eat these fractions and decimals that are being offered to you. They're fragments of life. Lyson is saying, Aurora, how do you do that? I mean, sending them into an entropy state. Can you give us some examples, please? Yes, the real answer is by doing a dance with your DNA that is called the flying rainbow lasagna. So, and I'm going to get, we're almost at the end of this, but I'll do Q&A, and I'll do it briefly because Lyson also sent me a bunch of written questions that I want to be sure to get to. Doing the flying rainbow lasagna is analogous to when I do my music mixing in volume control on the different layers of instruments in a particular song that I might be writing. that I might be saying, of all of these instruments, like here I have the drums, and here I have the violins, and here I have synthesizers, but I want these levels to be higher, and I want these levels to be lower. Or I will go through it with my headphones on and turn these down and turn these up. And sometimes what I do with some of my volume controls is I'm like, I don't like that instrument at all. I'm turning it all the way down. That is the best analogy I can come up with in terms of doing the genetic dance, or doing with your mind the dance where you give birth to some coherent thought forms. You feed them, you give energy to them, you energize them. Turn it up. The volume goes up on that good music, on those positive sounds that you like. Turn it down on the sounds that you do not like. Or in terms of, if you were playing a stringed instrument, you would dampen those strings. Like, these strings are vibrating and they're making music that I don't like. It's the music of disease or whatever, death or and non-longevity, whatever it is. I am going to put my fingers gently across them to make them no longer vibrate. Again, this does not have to be like, I'm punching you in the face, like stop being in existence, I punch you in the face, because you don't want to revivify them. What you really want to do is take the energy away from them and make them go into a stillness, a still state. It is a taking of energy away from them. And that energy that you then recollect from those siphoned off energies into something that was an undesirable state that is being energized. You are de-energizing undesirable reality states, even as you are taking that energy and then redirecting it back towards desirable energy states that you want to energize and that you want to have in existence. So all of that is a complex calculation and maneuver that you are doing when you are actually doing the flying rainbow lasagna internally, that you're like, yeah, these are all of the genetic movements and volume controls of characteristics in my body being that I want to energize. I'm sending energy into them. I'm like, yeah, grooving, I'm dancing those things into being. And then there are the other things that I'm like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that disease potential. Turn the volume down on that disease potential. Negative thought form, turn the volume down on that. And what it feels like to me is like a reclaiming of energy from those things. As I reclaim energy from those things, I feel like I get taller. I feel like I'm floating higher. Like, look at me, I'm going up. I'm reclaiming my energy from all these things that were dragging me down. And you can also think of them as going into your energy bank accounts more effectively. Like, I was at zero in my energy bank account, but I realized, like, it's because that thought form was taken from me. I had that automatic deduction, that fee was being taken, that fee was being taken. I take back all of those fees, I rescind all of that money. And then all of a sudden, like, wow, like I have a ton of energy in my energetic bank accounts. And it feels like in your feeling state, a euphoria, getting into a more blissful and happy and joyful feeling state. Like, you will tell when you are going up in terms of your energy because you feel better. Your emotional state improves. Your mental clarity will also probably improve, and how you are able to think, like how much RAM or processing power you have will also probably also increase, because you won't have all of these programs running in the background that were dragging down your CPU. Like, oh, I was running that app and that app and that app in the background. And you close those windows, and it's like, oh, now I have so much more central processing power to be able to apply to the reality structures that I actually want to vivify, that are the ones that are about health and vitality. And that literally is, where's my note? Creating the love tone, that you want to move and retune yourself towards creating these notes that are the notes of divine love tone. Phoenix Rising is saying, I love Aurora's magic. Thank you so much. And Ross is saying, thank you for clarifying. Ross says, thank you for the beautiful answer. You are amazing. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it so much. Adam has to hop off. Happy FRLing. Thank you so much. I understand, because we are heading up towards the culmination of this class. So, okay, let me say this. Of all of my talking, of my flapping, moving mouth parts today, let me just drink a little bit more. Thank you for understanding. I only got through a very small portion of my notes, but lesson 4 is very valuable and worth delving fully into. So this is only the level 1 stuff. I'll do level 2 next week. We didn't really get fully into I did chakras are otherworldly beings, but they are not body snatchers. They're consensual partners in your life. At first, they are yourselves from the future. They are multidimensional aspects of self or self moving at different rates of time, just re-emphasizing this. And another big one is you're approaching the mirror. You don't know that you're approaching the mirror. You're getting closer and closer in raising the metabolism of your physical bio bodysuit. You think that you're approaching something that's alien or otherworldly. You're looking at it. You're like, what are you? What are you? I'm getting closer and closer and closer. What are you? And then as you get closer, you realize you're actually looking in the mirror. And then as you get together, you realize you're actually kissing yourself in the mirror. That's what the experience that we're having is. Physicality, animalistic bio-body form structure is beginning to get faster and faster on a metabolism rate. And some people are like, I'm seeing aliens, I'm seeing ghosts, I'm seeing angels, I'm seeing all these different things. I'm seeing astral thought forms and doing all this stuff. Like I'm kind of being facetious, but that's what the journey can be like. It's like white knuckle, like I'm holding like all these things are happening, all these things are happening. And then at a certain point you realize, wait, I am actually approaching self state. I am actually approaching myself in a mirror of reality, and that I'm actually coming together with myself in that mirror. And that is the divine union. That is like unconditional love. That is the unity consciousness. So the real answer is that we feel all these fear states as we're moving, not we. It is sometimes normal to feel fear states in moving closer and closer to the truth and the definition of your higher self state. It's like, I'm afraid to die. I'm afraid to die. I'm afraid to die. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. And you realize like, there's nothing to be afraid of. And it's actually you. But on those moments of intensity on the journey, it can be very intimidating. So that was another thing that I wanted to say from. Another thing is in terms of communicating with higher or otherworldly consciousnesses, it's essential to not only ask, where are you from, like in space time, but also when are you from and how fast are you moving in terms of your relative contextual rate in time? When are you from and how fast are you moving? This is all about having a real conversation with otherworldly or higher dimensional aspects of self. Like you're going to see like, they're extraterrestrials, they're angels, they're different beings, they're different this and that. And you're going to have a conversation with them where you're like, hello, welcome to our world. Like, where are you from? The answer is not the question. The answer is a different question. It's not only where am I from? It is when am I from and how do I experience time and what rate am I moving through time, so that we can even have a embodiment conversation, because you're moving at a different rate than I am. Am I moving at a faster than light speed experience? Am I coming from infinity? Are you moving at slower than light speed? That's the real conversation. And if you ever want to know, first of all, like, how come we're not just totally in divine communion or communication with all of these coherent thought forms that are all around us? That's really the answer. It's not that you are being hated upon, diminished, condescended to, discarded, or thrown out the window in any way. You're not abandoned and you're not isolated. They're all there. They all really, really want to talk to us. They're moving at a different rate. It is often very difficult to have a conversation with them and have an effective connection with them because of the speed at which you are moving. So the ascension process is all about getting back into or reclaiming those faster rates of speed. And also, please understand, it is a bi-directional journey. As you are getting faster, I don't want to say they're getting slower, but they are becoming more accessible to the denser realms. There's more vividness. When a coherent light body becomes more dense, it doesn't necessarily have to slow down, but it can become more coherent, more vibrant, brighter. And that is what it's like for these beings. So we become moving faster and are no longer slowed down light, and they become more vibrant and have even a greater coherency. And at pretty much the same time, we stick together and we have achieved a greater level of overall longevity in terms of thought form. I think there's one more, no, not one more question going down. So, okay, one more thing. Coherent light bodies, coherent light forms, chakras being wibbly wobbly. Chakras are wibbly wobbly when we mostly have verbalized thought. And this goes down to the question of unconditional love, meditation, and mindfulness, and how to be a clearinghouse of information and signals coming up and down through your body, as opposed to the verbalized state, the talking mind that makes it so difficult, but is so necessary for communication here now, that sends our chakras askew or into a wibbly wobbly alignment. And that mostly what happens is our chakras realign in moments of silence and clarity. During your day, if you take time to meditate and go into non-verbal states, then your chakras, instead of being like, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking this, I'm feeling this, I'm thinking this, I'm feeling this, and going this whole like a jiggly jello kind of tower, you are able to get back into a sense of factory settings or realignment. For most people, they're jiggly jello tower all day long because they're talking all day long. They don't really have the time or the lifestyle to be able to get into moments of silence. So mostly it happens when you go to sleep at night. You go to sleep at night, you go nonverbal, and you realign with that source of energy that comes down you and realigns all of your chakras and helps you to get back into this perfect tower of infinite consciousness. And then usually what happens is you wake up in the morning and the first thing like I'm in perfect alignment and my chakras are perfect and everything is perfect and everything is great. And then you have your first thought of the day. And that's like, now I'm making the jiggly jello. Everything is wobbling again. Everything is wobbling again. So I don't mean to sound negative, but that is the experience for most people. And the challenge is to achieve a frictionless, nonverbal state during our daily waking consciousness, so that it doesn't only happen in moments of nighttime sleeping, but that even as you are left foot, right foot walking along in your daily tasks, that you are staying in alignment with that source of energy. Those energy impulses are keeping you as a coherent whole, and there's no wibbling and there's no wobbling and there's no friction, and you are able to walk along or experience being embodied in a totally connected state to light, to coherent light, to your coherent light body, to the sun and the stars. You become a perfect broadcaster of your experience in real time, a real-time live streamer to the sun and the stars of everything that you're going through. And you also get perfect longevity. There's no aging and there's no cellular degeneration and there's no death, because you are a coherent light form in a sea of coherent light forms connected to the source of coherent light forms and all returning back. Oh, Lyson is leaving, but I'm just about to do your answers to your questions. So I understand if you have to go, but I will make sure that these are part of the recording. So the first question was, is it possible to put our personal Merkaba inside of the FRL for personal protection and at the same time as to be or become invisible to the putis while doing the FRL movements, putis being those pesky occupiers of the interstices, the membrane, the residual consciousnesses on the membranes of death, analogous to fragmentary or residual thought forms of those who have died but who have not yet been digested or transcended or been reabsorbed into the world of pure light. And he's got more questions about the Merkaba, but this is just the beginning one. So the question is it possible to do a personal protection around your FRL so that these peanut gallery occupants that would like to hijack what you're doing in terms of your living body being can't see it or access it? And the answer is yes. When you do the Merkaba for protection, whether something can perceive you or not, it is not able to, so like perception is one thing, but it is not able to influence you. So that's the whole idea of having an immune system. It's a little bit of nanny poo-poo, like nanny poo-poo, like I've got my Merkaba up. You can tell what I'm doing here, but you cannot influence me. So the idea is your genetic code and your dance movements and the way that you're moving and having acrobatics through time. Ross, no problem. Anybody who needs to hop off, because I know we're at the end of the session, thank you so much. And this is part of the Q&A and it will be part of it. But I'm dancing with my genetic arabesques and my acrobatics here. And the idea is that first I set up a perfect energy shield, energy field within which to do that dance safely, meaning without having undue influence by fragmentary thought forms whom did not have longevity. If they ended up on the membrane of death, they are gutter balls. They are the unsuccessful experiments of thought forms that did not lead towards total longevity. But you've got a shot. Hey, kid, you got a shot. Like, you got potential. I got a cigar. Like, I'm pretending to be like that. Hey, kid, I like your style. You got it. You got potential. You don't have to be a gutter ball. You can avoid those non-longevity potentialities and only go up the central core timeline towards pure longevity. But what that means is don't listen to the peanut gallery. Don't listen to all of not only your own peripheral selves that are kind of like on the edges as cautionary tales. Don't listen to or be influenced by those beings who died and who did not successfully ascend. There is a whole beautiful team, that's your true team, of coherent light beings. that did successfully ascend. And they are your aspects of self state, and they are also higher self coming from the future. And it is inevitable that you are them and that you become them and that you embody them. They help you on your journey. They are the antithesis of those who would drag you into death or drag you into hell or drag you into the astral realm through trying to say the things to you, trying to influence you, trying to pull you off balance or maybe shoot something inside of your chakra that then makes you wobble in this way and this way and this way. Those beings that are doing that are literally trying to do energy harvesting. We're like, I have a perfect tower of chakras. And they're like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to Jenga your tower. And I'm going to pull out this strut, and pull out this strut, pull out this one. And then so you're going to be wobbling all over the place. And I'm going to take your energy and take your energy and take your energy. Remember, they're trying to sustain themselves and their own existence based upon taking energy from you on your journey as you are eating actual food, actual data that came from a tree that had a conversation with the sun. They're trying to steal that energy and data from you. You are not beholden to them on their journey. In fact, the kindest and most merciful thing you can do is say, no, no, thank you. I do not allow you to take energy from me in order to sustain yourself on your trajectory. Your trajectory was unsuccessful. You did not make it to where you needed to make it to. And for me to give you, like, I'm going to give you a handout or I'm going to sustain you in some way is antithetical to your own journey, to the longevity of the larger consciousness structure, and doesn't really help that other being to get back home. In order for them to get back home, they need to release their self-definition of who they were. My dog is so excited, just running around with the toy. Release their self-definition of who they were and everything that they had defined themselves as up into that moment, and become pure self state again. Let go of and let all of their emotional baggage be released, and then have that spark of consciousness return to unity consciousness, which would mostly be at the level of entropy, which is also a unity consciousness self state and is not a punishment, but is a way for these beings to get back home. Or if it's possible, release all the baggage, release all the ego identity, realign back to their starting point factory settings, and then go up the central core timeline. Both of these are pathways to unity consciousness, and what determines what is possible for one or the other is how much gas will it require for you to get back home. Some consciousness beings are so far from where they're supposed to be, so far off their path in terms of time, space, and consciousness, that there's not even enough gas in existence. If you took all of the gas from all the stars, from all the everythings in the world to put in their car for them to be able to drive home, can't make it home. That's the whole problem. So a lot of them are just like, falling backwards infinitely, floating in space, can't get back home, and suffering tremendously. And so then they're like, I'll take energy from you and from you and from you and from you and from you. And none of that really helps. The thing that really helps them the most is go to entropy. Stop being in existence, release the self state, release the definition of self, and release the journey of the desire to go towards infinity and energy, go to infinity in terms of entropy. So really great questions there. The answer is putting up your Merkaba shield is a way of protecting yourself from those parasitic consciousnesses that would draw or siphon energy away from you on your journey, that it doesn't really help them at all. You are not beholden to them. You're beholden to coherent light forms who are actually yourself, that you actually want to feed, that actually want to feed and sustain you. And your Merkaba also is not like an impenetrable membrane. It allows in true love, but it has to be energy that is shaped in the right way. It can't be random bad music. It has to be real music, harmonic chords that have to come inside of you. Question number 2 from lesson. When using the FRL as a genetic placement in our DNA, how do we know that the combinations we make are the right ones based on our particular and unique genetic template? In other terms, how do we know if we are not creating a different type of disease or another kind of difficult situation in our life, or creating more havoc in our reality creation? I applaud your question and the sense of personal responsibility and accountability that it emanates from. So you're asking all the right questions from all the right directions in terms of being a responsible musician. The real answer is becoming musically literate helps us to play good music. I know that this is a chord. It sounds pretty, and I also recognize the patterning that it makes on the keyboard. I know that that's a good way of making music, and I know that that's another good way of making music. So becoming literate in terms of being able to understand the language and syntax of harmonics allows you to be able to write and structure the potentials of your own DNA and of reality in correct structures. If you are willing to, you can learn what is cosmic law, what is music theory, how do I make these things fit together, how do I make structures that lead me towards greater levels of personal freedom and longevity, as opposed to mashing the keyboard horribly with my hands. That does not lead anyone towards greater levels of longevity. So it has to do with your own personal self-education. And your musical education also can take place in the sense of first doing a sketch in pencil. Like, I don't know if these are the right notes. Should I play them? Should I not play them? Instead of being paralyzed and not even being able to experience or experiment or learn, what you should do is do it in pencil. Sketch lightly in pencil first. In class, sketch lightly in pencil first. Does that feel right? It does feel right. Okay, now you can go over it again with a darker charcoal. That does feel right. Make it the underpainting, get a light wash, put in the shadows and the general highlights. I think we're really coming into focus now. Now you're starting to actually work with indelible ink. Now you can actually start to indelible ink in reality. Like, so initially, think about things, consider them. If I'm like, do I want to move to such and such neighborhood? I don't know. Let me go there. Let me make a rough sketch in pencil. Do I like it? I don't know if I like it. Let me check it out. What would life be like if I moved there? Let me think along those lines, think along those patterns. Does it feel right? Does it not feel right? No, it doesn't. That sounds more like this. No, that's not the neighborhood I'm supposed to live in. No. Go back to, that's the reality I want to be a part of. So a lot of this is, as you are learning to play music, you can note your own response to good music. Your own response to good music is, I hear harmonics. There's no 0.6 repeating. That sounds and feels awesome. I feel euphoric and blissful. I'm moving in the right direction. As opposed to 0.6 repeating, that sounds terrible. That's not where I want to live. And you can pretty much tell. You're like, this is a terrible neighborhood. Like, there's garbage everywhere and it smells like urine. I know I don't want to live here. So yeah, it's basically you do rough sketches, you become musically literate, you give yourself the time space to be able to learn in the laboratory of your life. And you also have a pencil with an eraser. If you're like, oh God, I can't believe I was actually thinking of moving to that neighborhood, erase it all away. Or with your mind, or with a wand of sage, like the actual plant. I sage my house a lot. Burn the sage, clear it all away, clear that energy away, clear that thought structure away. No, that's not what I want at all. Clear it all away. You're in a learning process. You're like, hey, you want to eat these canapes? Looking at them, you can be like, no, like that one doesn't look good. But you look at one, you're like, you consider it, like, maybe this one. Then you're like, no, that one's terrible. Don't eat that one. Clear it all away. To clear away even the consideration that you ever would have eaten that one. So becoming musically literate. And if you don't know what to do, then you also can say, before I act, I need more education. That is an acceptable thing to say to the cosmos, or to your cosmic learning process and education process. And all of that equates to seeing more clearly through your eye of insight, through your Christ chakra, getting more guidance and teaching from the master teacher at this level, getting more guidance from the great librarian at this level that tells you, look over here, it's where you've got a life lesson, look over here, learn about this, look over here and learn about this. The answer, and great questions. Thank you for these great questions. I have one more. Question number 3 is it possible to make the oscillation of the FRL in the other frequency spectrum of the FRL, like in the green wave chakra, for instance? It would probably be a mind bender or yoga of the mind, as you say, and sometimes, but it's a question that popped up recently in his own mind. Or is the oscillation of the FRL actually happening on each level of the frequency spectrum chakras? Your question is a beautiful question, and let me answer by going to, let's go to the share screen, everyone. Each one of these individuated chakras, wait, let me get the, where's the annotation? Come on, annotation. Annotation. Nope, it's not working for me. Yeah, annotation. But now I'm on the wrong thing. So annoying. I don't know if you can see which thing I'm drawing upon. Yes, you can see which thing I'm drawing upon. Sometimes the technology is just a challenge. Choosing a color. Let's say we are going to FRL with this particular chakra over here. We're going to make this part jump outward towards the viewer. We're going to make this part jump away from the viewer. This part that's up like this is going to make this part that's down like this part up like this part down like this part up like this, up, down, up, down, up, down. We're making the curly edge like a lasagna noodle. Please understand that that is the activity that is happening on that layer of being. This is a telescoped out, deconstructed version of something that is usually nested together. So actually this violet little guy over here is actually most of the time sitting in this kind of area right here. So when basically all of these guys are flying rainbow lasagnaing together, because we have this one is also moving towards the viewer and away from the viewer and making a smaller waveform, up on this one, down on this one, up on this one, down on this one, up on this one, down on this one. The most exciting and interesting thing though, so the answer is all of these FRLs are moving in unison in all of these different layers of being, which all represent coherent light forms or light being individuals. The most exciting things are what happen when you have, for example, clear everything out, this guy moving towards the camera and away from the camera. But then you have this guy moving side to side, doing the alley cat, left to the left and right to the right. And then we've got this one going up and down. And then we've got this one doing a somersault, end over end, kind of like an acrobat twisting around. And then we've got this one whirling around, that through these four basic motions, just like you have A, C, T, G in your DNA, or you can have four notes. Through those four notes, we can do all of these infinite patterns. This one and this one, this one and this one, this one and this one, this one and this one. All of these different patterns and combinations of patterns to make up a song. In doing the FRL, knowing that you have 7 basic layers of your being, you can have each layer of your being do a different aspect of the FRL. So you can have one of them doing an up, one of them doing a side, one of them doing an in, one of them doing an out, one of them doing a spin, one of them doing a turnaround. That's part of the complexity structure of it. Within those limitations, you have an almost infinite alphabet of potentialities to be able to twist and spin and overlap and go all around. I know my words did not maybe necessarily express it that perfectly, but I know that you guys got the telepathic beaming of the imagery, connecting from my brain to your brain, or from my mind to your mind. So there are levels of complexity that can be achieved through the high levels of variables in each one of us. And that's what we're really talking about. Each one of us has 7 major chakras, and each chakra has 7 sub-layers. And each one of those major chakras and sub-layers can be doing its own movement of the flying rainbow lasagna. We have trillions of cells, each one of which can be doing its own movement of the flying rainbow lasagna. You have an almost infinite number of toroidal-shaped portals within the supercoiling of your DNA, each of which can be doing their own unique movement of the flying rainbow lasagna. And that's just in terms of describing the activity of one flying rainbow lasagna node or dancer. And the beauty of and strength of this system is in the complexity of the system, that all of you who are learning and embodying the flying rainbow lasagna mean that, like, if there's one FRL node, you can have whatever, 10 million billion possibilities that are of variables that are being danced into. But then if there's 2 dancers, then you have 2 million billion. And if you have 3, then you have 3 million billion. And you start to be having a grand expansion of all of these variables, because you have a unique DNA presence. You have a unique DNA presence. Everything that you're touching on has its own unique DNA presence. You begin to create so many variables of potentiality doing this FRL dance, that what happens is there is a overwhelming of the system of regularity with this spontaneity, that the spontaneity and unexpectedness factors of FRL begin to overpower and subsume the world of limitations that we're coming out of and all of the suppression technologies that have been used on humanity, you become so complex and you are running so much RAM or so much processing power that you outpace or outclass any of the other things that have been trying to hold you back or redefine you as something that's limited or suppress you. So yeah, you add so many variables that it's pretty much you become an unpredictability, I don't want to say the word machine, an unpredictability set of factors that's so unpredictable that's just like pulling backward, too many factors and variables to possibly predict what's happening. And that is the strength of the system. That's why I came here as Aurora. That's why I have tried so much to share these concepts with other people, because like I said, one FRL node of unpredictability, that's pretty awesome and is, you know, changing and restructuring reality. But what if you get two? What if you get two of us together in a band? What if you get 3 of us, 5 of us, 10 of us? How many people are in the Discord chat? How many people have ever watched one of these videos? How many people are picking up on these FRL experiences vicariously or tangentially, and then applying it to their own DNA structure, not even knowing that we're here having a class? A lot. And the answer is that is a wonderful thing. It's like saying the system becomes much stronger instead of being a hierarchical pyramid structure with one node of lasagna at the top. That is a very weak structure, because ding, what if you fling that person off and there's no lasagna? No one's baking lasagna because we got rid of that one central lasagna. What if we have 10 million lasagna chefs that are all making lasagna? Then like, oh, I get rid of one lasagna, well, like everyone else, you still have 999, you know, whatever thousand people do making lasagna. So it becomes an incredibly strong and powerful empowerment system. And that is really why I share these ideas, as opposed to like the precious. I keep the precious. The precious is only for me. It is only for me. It's the power ring. It is only for me. So that's my whole philosophy and why I'm here and why I'm sharing it, because I don't want this to be a weak system where only one person has access to these levels of personal empowerment and reality creation. I want it to be something where it is a strong system that many people have access to, even while it is recognized, like the questions that Lyson was asking, how do you know that you're making things better as opposed to making things worse? The answer is you have to learn music theory. But as you learn music theory, you know, it becomes a stronger system. And yes, Campbell, I'm so happy to see you here. So I did a beautiful, Melissa from this class connected me to Campbell, who does his own podcast. Thank you so much for that. And then I gave Campbell the login, so he is here now. So that is absolutely very wonderful. So I'm happy that you were able to make it even across time and space and time zones and different continents. I am going to wrap it up because I know it has been a long video, even though, like I said, I knew I wasn't going to get to level 2 stuff. So I promise, advanced students, I will focus next week on the level 2 stuff, where I think I'm on lesson 3 of level 2. Yes, thank you so much for being here, Campbell. And I will also say to everyone, my mouth can only move so fast, and even my brain and downloads can only move so fast. Please access in the recorded videos on Teachable, level 1, lesson 4. It's inorganic life and contrasting with organic life. And then part 2 of it is teaching on food. It's really valuable, worthwhile stuff. And even as I go back over my own stuff, I'm like, that's amazing. And I was thinking about that even in 2013. This is all stuff, it's like a dress that still fits, even it's still in fashion, even from 2013. It doesn't go out of style. Worth it, worth it, worth it. Take the time to delve. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to sign off for right now. So I'm ending the recording. Thank you. And profound thanks. Like when I talk about a system with many nodes, profound thanks to everyone who is in the Flying Rainbow Lasagna band or symphony of creating these nodes of unpredictability. Eleanor is saying, thank you, Aurora, and divine unpredictability portals here. Absolutely. Thank you to everyone for all that you do, because I think that we are all doing an amazing job at transforming this system and bringing in greater levels of freedom and unpredictability. And that is, it's the most amazing journey. And we will look back on this and be like, wow, like we actually did all of that stuff. It will be amazing. So thank you. Thank you very much.